as long as it was below around 12K,
yes,
to me, it was like the best risk adjusted time to buy Bitcoin in like almost a decade.
and
It was just an amazing time.
That's exactly what we were doing here.
So who else started then? That was you guys. That was Lynn Alden started right then. Michael Saylor,
yes,
Lawrence Lepard,
yes,
Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones. Like all of those great thinkers started buying Bitcoin March or April of 2018. That I was like, oh my gosh, like Bitcoin is the only real thing here. It's the only thing I want to spend any time on. I'm only going to work on Bitcoin from now on.
In my opinion, you know, the major exchanges like Coinbase to finally dump on the public. I mean, that's just your classic pump and dump. I mean, is that your take? And if it is that the take you really saw very deeply when you were involved in the raising of money for some of these things? Above $1 million by 2030, the end of the decade.
Oh, 90%.
Wow.
Yeah,
well, that's certain.
Yeah. Well, I've publicly stated that one many times before, so I'm sticking to it.
Bitcoinization,
and by the way, in present day purchasing power.
Today is not going to be our normal session. It's a very special session. Today, I'm very proud and honored to be able to bring to you Cory Klippsten. Cory Klippsten is with us today. And guys, Cory has worked with and for some of the largest tech companies in the entire universe. All right. He's invested in dozens of technology startups. He's raised money for dozens of more. I consider him a serial entrepreneur. I don't know if he'll say that about himself, but more important than all of this, guys, is the fact that for me, at least, Cory is the co-founder and CEO of Swan Bitcoin. Now, as many of you know, I'm a huge supporter of Swan. I've been a client for slightly more than 1 year, and I cannot offer enough praise about the service I've received and the personal touch the firm has provided me over that entire year. It's been amazing. And I'm not only pleased, but I'm incredibly honored to be able to speak directly to him in front of you today. So without any further ado, all right, I would like to present to you Cory Klippsten. Cory, I want to thank you. Cory, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hey, mucho gusto, Oliver. Nice to see you.
Fantastic. You're breaking out the Spanish too.
Yeah.
You know, Cory, I have watched literally every single YouTube video, public talk, interview, podcast you've done. I feel like you're my brother from another mother. I've loved the work you've put out into the field, and certainly I love the service that I'm a part of myself with you. So Cory, just to give you a little intro here, this talk of ours is taking place in a private setting, specifically for the members of my Bitcoin club. Now, we are a little more than 3,400 members strong. These members are all Bitcoiners, okay? They span many different countries, but the vast majority of them speak one of three languages. That's English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So for that reason, our talk today is actually being simultaneously translated in all three of those languages. Now, once we're finished with this talk, those three versions of our talk will be uploaded to one of three of my YouTube channels. I have a YouTube channel for English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and I hope to be able to share what we share with my audience here today to the entire world. All right? Is that okay with you?
Muito bem, muy bien.
Fantastic. All right, so I'd like to start off on the personal side. Now, I've heard your personal story multiple times, but for the benefit of my audience, I just think you have one of the most interesting upbringings I've heard. If I'm not mistaken, you didn't start public school until you were 9 years old or something like that. Can you
Fifth grade, yeah,
fifth
fifth
grade?
grade.
Can
Yep,
you
I was
talk? Can you
9.
talk a bit about that?
Yeah, man. So, yeah, my parents were from fairly traditional backgrounds, I guess, in the Midwest originally, but like a lot of people in the 60s and 70s in the counterculture movement, California was calling. And, they both found their way to San Francisco. I think my dad was in LA first and then came up to SF. And they met, in Haight-Ashbury and kind of the spiritual seeking scene. And, I was actually raised in sort of like bouncing back and forth between Marin County and way up north in Lake County, which is you have to go through Napa and Sonoma to get to Lake County in Northern Cali. And, very sort of hippie. We had like this big sanctuary up there where it was like, farm animals and trees and lakes and all this kind of crazy stuff way up in Northern Cali. So I spent about 4 years way up north and about 4 years in Marin. And, at some point they just decided to bounce and head up to Seattle and kind of disassociate from that whole scene and kind of go mainstream again. This is like a Kansas University grad and a Western Illinois grad, and they were just kind of done with it. And, it's like the mid 80s. And I got kind of thrust into mainstream society. So I laugh a lot and I love international audiences. And merhaba to the one person from Istanbul. My wife is from Istanbul.
Wow, nice. Okay.
But it's so funny, man. I often laugh that I couldn't possibly look more waspy, being like 6'4", blonde, blue, all that. But like, I'm basically an immigrant to this country, and I've always had that kind of lens of looking at things as an outsider, because that's how I was trained and that's how I had to be at such a young age, trying to observe and fit in, sort of joining mainstream society.
That's very fascinating. Were you generally intelligent as a kid, or did your intelligence sort of develop over time?
I've probably gotten dumber every year since. No, but the good thing about the private schooling, we had like small community schools, but a lot of the people there were pretty well educated. So I was learning from like Harvard PhDs and stuff as a small child.
Nice.
So I was done with 6th grade when I was 9, before joining public school. And so it was like either going to 7th grade or going to 4th grade, which would have been my age. And we just decided to do like the honors program in 5th grade and, see what happened. So that was kind of the jump off. Really? But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you really want to break it down, I think I was probably one of those people that really enjoyed mastery of certain things. But once I had things, I wanted to stay in my lane to some degree. And I think I probably didn't challenge myself nearly enough academically, because I was like a really good test taker and didn't have to. And so that was kind of a theme. I definitely,
that was me.
That was you. So I was a procrastinator. And as I got older for, undergrad and grad school, I definitely over optimized on social life. That was the reason to be in college and grad school for me, was partying, basically.
I was a professional crammer. I never even bought the books. I spent an hour and a half before exams. And because of that, yes, I had this, because testing came so easily for me. I never really, like you said, I never really applied myself to any one particular subject and dove into it unless it really had a deep interest for me. If it didn't have a deep interest for me, I just did it. I just did what the professor wanted to receive in order to get my grades.
Yeah. Luckily, I did get interested in, some things outside of school, and some of it was sparked by school too. I found a lot of joy in sort of networking, and you could apply that to the world of fundraising. So that's something that I started doing in 2004, initially raising money for nightclubs and restaurants and movie funds and real estate and stuff like that. And then that sort of skill set carried over later when I stopped working for big companies and I got into startups. That was something that I naturally took to, was, working with founders and VCs and helping capital sort of lubricate the whole growth of these venture-backed startups.
Now, did you start off right away investing in those startups, or did you help formulate the startups and then began to invest in some of the startups later?
It's turned more toward investing over time, but I would say like a little bit of the investing was there from the beginning, and it was just like it was heavier on advising and helping and less investing. And then as you start to have some exits and start to get more capital available, it becomes easier to write those checks.
Sure.
A lot of this is also wifey socialization, because when she met me, I was a management consultant, and then I worked for Google, and it all felt very solid. And so taking the risk with the career was hard to also take risk with our capital on top of that initially. So, the last 9 years from leaving Google in 2013 through today have been a story of like acclimating our family to getting used to taking more and more risk with our own capital.
Right.
Yeah.
When you were at Google, did you run into coworkers, colleagues that had a deep interest in Bitcoin?
Mm-mm.
I mean, we're talking not
at all.
It was early days.
Yeah, 2011 to 2013. It's in my email in 2012, but I don't remember reading it. So, really the first time, I was seeing headlines here and there, but none of them made an impression.
I was the same way.
Same way. Yeah. So, I kind of remember there was like Silk Road and some Bitcoin stuff or whatever, but I was just so heads down, jumping into tech full time. And I was living in LA, but trying to network into Silicon Valley, which meant that I was up there 3-4 days a week. A lot of day trips on Surf Air and Southwest, just going up for the day and just networking and trying to like plug into the Silicon Valley ecosystem. And it wasn't until I remember it was January 29th of 2014. I was at a tech conference actually in LA, and somebody was handing out $50 worth of Bitcoin if you downloaded a blockchain wallet. And that was the first time that I talked about it a little bit and thought about it a little bit, but it didn't take. I lost the wallet, didn't do anything about it. That was strike one. Strike two was Christmas of 2015. I was at a friend's kind of like overnight holiday party / weekend up in Santa Barbara. And I helped him. He had packaged together like 8 of his startup stakes into a Series LLC that he wanted to sell half of it. So I said, I'll help you create the deck and the pitch for that in exchange for some of the proceeds. And 2 of the companies, one was frickin' Ripple, and the other one was like Balaji's, toaster mining company, 21.co, which became the, shitcoin education at Coinbase.
Wow.
And so neither of those caught my attention and made me excited about Bitcoin, because it was looking at it through the wrong lens. It wasn't until all the noise of the price run up in spring of 2017, that's finally what got me. It was just, all the enthusiasm that was just cacophonous, and that finally drew me in.
Yeah, so, I had we're a fairly large trading organization. We've got 13,000 traders across 96 different countries. And I remember when Bitcoin was experiencing that huge 2017 run up, a big percentage of my traders just kept pounding me about this thing. Why aren't we trading this? Why aren't we trading this? And I took a look for the first time in a serious way. And I was like, well, first of all, this is certainly not the time to be thinking about entering this market. It had gone so far and so long. And I remember saying to myself that, wow, I've never seen a market do this, but I'd like to see it crash first before I start getting interested in it. And that's exactly what it did. And I consider myself a relatively late comer to Bitcoin because I wanted to watch that crash. I wanted to see how it handles itself. I wanted to see where it settled. And I think we timed it right in terms of our getting into it back in March of 2020. But, my first foray is in March of 2020, and it already seems like it's 10 years. I've been involved in 10 years,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I think that little window there, really early 2020, inclusive of the dip on March 12th and then the kind of V-shaped recovery, but all the way through the summer, as long as it was below around 12K,
yes,
to me it was like the best risk-adjusted time to buy Bitcoin in almost a decade.
And that's
just an amazing time.
That's exactly what we were doing here. So many of the people listening to us today, we started on March 12th, right in the midst of the collapse.
Yeah.
And really spent our time going through heavy accumulation during that sub 10,000, sub 12,000. area. So it was, I think it was a great time to start. I mean, I think like anyone else, you wish you started much earlier.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have that feeling as
But
well.
you're
You wish
right
you
there.
started
Like,
earlier.
who else started then? That was you guys. That was Lynn Alden started right then. Michael
Yeah.
Saylor, Lawrence
Yes.
Lepard,
Yes.
Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones. Like all of those great
Yes.
thinkers started buying Bitcoin in the
Right
spring of
in that
2020.
time. Well, who would you say, Cory, if you had to name one person that's responsible for orange pilling you into Bitcoin, who would that one person be?
I mean, there are so many, but I will tell you, this is so I came into it through Silicon Valley, right? So what was my
Right.
social network and my professional network pointing me toward? Altcoins, right? Because I was like all over Andreessen Horowitz and Fred Wilson, reading all their blogs all the time. And, people in my circles that were jumping over into crypto were like running crypto funds and, joining, ICO projects and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's how I first came in. And I had, I wrote like 50 pages of prep work for my own shitcoin fund and was going to do all this stuff. And anyway, I'll cut to I'll get through the timing first. So it was about March or April of 2018 that I was like, oh my gosh, like Bitcoin is the only real thing here. It's the only thing I want to spend any time on. I'm only going to work on Bitcoin from now on. At that point, I had just become president and CIO of a 9-figure crypto fund and hired 12 people, and I had to extricate myself from all of that.
Wow.
But the pinprick in the bubble for me that was getting me to think about and kind of made me spend the winter of 17-18 at least starting to go deeper on Bitcoin and start to question what I was seeing with all the altcoins was Jimmy Song.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it was in person. It was actually at a blockchain conference in Santa Monica, and
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty funny. I get a lot of my cues from the people around me and just being very
Yes.
observant, as you can kind of tell. And yeah, it was at the Aviation Museum at the Santa Monica Airport. It was
Wow.
this, BlockCon, I think was the name of the conference. And all kinds of madness going on inside. Everybody pitching their stuff and their, this, that, the other from the stage. And I took a little break and I walked outside. And there's people kind of hanging out on the lawn with the the plane on display and everything. And
Right.
there's this one group off on the side, and there's this guy with tight jeans, looks a little bit jacked. He's got a cowboy hat on, good looking Korean dude. And he's just looking around at everybody else like he absolutely hates them and wants to wipe them off the face of the earth. And I was like, well, that seems attractive. I think I want to see what that guy's about. So I walked over, got to know him a little bit, and that led to his YouTube channel and just
Wow.
I had tapped some of the Bitcoin resources previously,
Yes.
but just as like another coin or the biggest one or the oldest one or whatever. And then I started seeing it through this whole other lens and really teasing apart the uniqueness of this asset, and that one of these is not like the others.
Yeah. So yeah, you got it. So that was a good time. 2018.
That was actually 2017 that he
2017
picked the Pren in like October, November, but it took like 4 or 5 months for me to get all the way through what we call the shitcoin horseshoe. You start with Bitcoin, you do the horseshoe, right, and then you come out the other side. So I came out the other side around April. Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting because I have to admit, I told you that we're really serious Bitcoiners here, and but I think everyone has their shitcoin experience, and we're no exception to that. So when we first went in March of 2020, we did this with both Bitcoin and Ethereum, and at the time, Bitcoin was nothing more than another intermediate term play for us. And the way I looked at Ethereum at the time was, hey, look, this seems very much like Apple and a platform for applications. And I understood distinctly that Bitcoin was more like the money or the money of the entire crypto ecosystem. So I've got the monetary money part here and the application part, and we hit them both. And it wasn't, I think, until actually Bitcoin reached 14,000 or so that I began to make the same connection that you made. Like, wait a minute, this is more than a trade. This is more than buying something for $1 and selling it for $2. This is the monetary base layer of value potentially for the entire world. Like it's just exploded. And I have to admit to you that while in recent times he's broken my heart, but Raoul Paul had a big influence on me at that time when he was predominantly pounding the table on Bitcoin. And many of his insights made me go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. So I really have to thank him in that early time for tipping me over and making me see that this was something far more special than the way I was looking at it. But in recent times, he's sort of like gone off the deep end, I think. I mean, that's my opinion anyway.
Well, there's a few types of people that talk a lot about investments, and there's traders, there's investors that are kind of like more long-term people, there's journalists, and then there's salesmen. And Raul's a salesman. That's his training, right? And so he's looking for a story. And if you ever had friends that worked at Wall Street banks, and my roommate for years in New York was on a sales desk at Goldman, and basically on Sunday you spend your whole day reading through Barron's and Wall Street Journal, and you come up with like your pitches for the next week, and you're just looking for something that's going to be interesting enough to hold people's attention.
That's right.
So that they'll do business with you, right? And Raul had a good story and he had a good pitch, and it like finding the truth in the narrative wasn't really important. Making it interesting was. And in as much as it got some people interested in Bitcoin, great. In as much as people started to trust a salesman who was just looking for something to talk about, and they then carried forward thinking that he had other good things to say beyond that. Right. Your loss if you trust a salesman.
Right. I agree. I agree. He lost me, but he did. His message really resounded with me at that particular time. Your involvement in Silicon Valley gives you, in my opinion, a very deep insight into how most of these other cryptocurrencies are nothing more than pump and dump schemes. I mean, I've been in the equity markets for 35 plus years, and I've been around these pump and dump schemes, and virtually everyone I see in this space is nothing more than hype and marketing behind it. And a lot of them are using, in my opinion, the major exchanges like Coinbase to finally dump on the public. I mean, that's just your classic pump and dump. I mean, is that your take? And if it is that the take you really saw very deeply when you were involved in the raising of money for some of these things?
Yeah, so I didn't get involved in raising money for ICOs. I raised a lot of money for startups, startup equity. The only pre-full Bitcoin focused deal that I was involved in that raised money was actually that equity deal for Everpedia, which came out of the Galaxy EOS fund. So they bought like $30 million worth of equity in the Everpedia entity. Wow. But I didn't sell any tokens, which is nice. Yeah. So one of the things was just like, if you have a lot of experience evaluating founders and evaluating business plans and just like ripping apart decks and models and things like that, like a lot of these things was just like, wow, these people could never raise money in Silicon Valley because they don't have anything. They're basically just scammers that have come to this place that's kind of like the Wild West. These were not the founder profiles that you would look for,
right?
To be funding. And then, even the mature products, if you actually could stomach sitting down and reading their materials, print one of these things out and have a red pen with you and just start circling things that are bullshit. Like, I'll give a good example. Like the last time I did this was like, oh God, it was probably a year ago. And I think Chainlink put out like a white paper 2.0 or something. And it had like 15 PhDs and profs listed as the co-authors across the top. And it was a sea of red by the second page. Like, wow. So much just lies and bullshit and just jargon and shit that doesn't make any sense and is not true. I mean, it was just layer upon layer of bullshit. And I was like, oh my God, that's like a top 10 shitcoin. And it's that bad. I just like it.
Wow.
It hasn't gotten any better. These guys are still faking it. Like, it's still horrible.
The valuations of these things, I think, are based on just really light floats as well. So when we're talking about Bitcoin, when people are talking about Bitcoin dominance against these things, do you consider that really real? Because I mean, if 70% of you know of the float is tightly held and a small percentage is out there trading and establishing the valuation, that valuation is not real in your view, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think market cap in general is a metric that can be messed with very
That's
easily.
right.
As you know about low float penny stocks from back in the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, you'll get some founder that controls 98% of the float and, you know, has some money on the side. And if anybody out of that 2% float actually starts selling, he just, you know, buys it to support the price. And that's exactly what goes on in crypto now, right? You even see these, you know, these new ones popping up that don't do ICOs anymore. They do IDOs or whatever. And they may have like this DAO or whatever that's, you know, 3 little Anons in Thailand or something that are, you know, moving the funds around.
Sure.
And it's transparent as hell, man. They literally allot like 8 to 10% of the float just for market makers. And they hire these market makers and you have to pay the exchanges and the market makers. Like, I saw how the sausage was made because I was talking to like Gen Fund and Sequoia and Amber and like all these guys, Blockchain, like every player in the crypto industry I was dealing with in like fall and winter of 2017 through about like April, May of 2018. I know exactly how the sausage is made and it's all manufactured. You would call it like, you know, it's like painting a flag on a chart, you know, and making retail believe this, but it's that times 1,000 because the whole thing is manufactured.
Wow.
It's all just fake Discord activity, fake Telegram activity. And there's vendors shilling all the way up and down the stack, just trying to pretend that there's something real going on here. You know, DeFi retail activity, and let's use retail activity as a proxy, even though it's not, as a proxy for like real world value, even though those are actually just traders too. But let's assume that there was like some reason for somebody that really was like, that's the best place that I can get risk reward for my savings as a normal human. And it's still like 1 to 2% of DeFi volume. It's all just crypto trading and crypto traders and crypto hedge funds in a zero sum casino. Wow. That's what I've started calling it, the zero sum casino.
Absolutely. And there's some really, I think there's some really close similarities with that, the period of time when online gambling was not quite legal or not quite regulated. And so these guys were running like it was the wild, wild west, getting in and getting as much as they possibly could before regulation really hit them. And I see pretty much that's the same scenario that we're dealing with.
It's a lot of the same people.
Oh, is it really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah. This is like the crypto people are like gaming people. The other huge one is gambling. And then the one that's just massive is ad tech. Because ad tech used to be the Wild West, right? Like limitless inventory. Right. So it was basically all the people running around LA where you were like, how does that person have money? They were just committing ad fraud on a massive global scale. So it was mostly people in LA and people in Russia committing ridiculous ad fraud. And, you know, those people are all in crypto now.
Cory, what do you think about future regulation? I mean, a lot of people focus more on, it seems like the media focuses more on Bitcoin when it comes to pending or upcoming possible regulation. I think that the space that really is going to receive the brunt of a lot of regulatory pressure is actually the crypto space. So Bitcoin's Bitcoin, crypto's crypto. What's your view on that?
I've tried to reach a level of sort of equanimity about it as the percentage chance has increased that they're all going to get away with it.
Really?
Yeah, so I thought it was like a damn near certainty a couple of years ago that it was just all going to get smacked down. What I did not foresee was, you know, $40 billion of LP money going into these, you know, name brand venture funds over the last year, like Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia and all these guys, and that they would actually be cool with that, that they would just rent their brands out for this type of activity, this short time to liquidity, fake products with no product market fit, and you know, no real chance for survival in the long term, and they'd be totally cool with that.
So
I did not foresee
too
that.
much money, the names are too big, too much money in this space.
They can just buy everybody off. That's the thing, right?
True.
They can tie them up in court, right? So they keep on hiring the regulators, and they get around the lobbying thing by actually making them general partners of the funds. So if you were actually hired as like a lobbyist, it's all tracked, and there's a certain amount of time that you can spend on Capitol Hill. You hire somebody as a GP for your fund, like Andreessen keeps doing, and they can spend their entire 100% of their hours in DC, you know, buttering people up and arguing your case or whatever. So that's what they've been doing.
It's interesting. Interesting. All right.
Yeah. So it's really like regulatory capture. And I mean, you see just what Ripple's been able to do because they have so much money from dumping on retail with all this false marketing over the last decade. And, you know, they're creating a lot of, like, it's just very expensive to prosecute when somebody is hired. I mean, they have the former head of the SEC on their legal team.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
You know, and she's able to get meetings with people and make things problematic for, you know, coming after them or whatever. And they'll drag everybody down with them, right? Because they'll say like, well, you know, Ethereum, they've been basically doing Oppo research on Ethereum for the last 2 years, dragging them through the mud too. So it's like, if you want to take down Ripple, you got to take down Ethereum, because obviously that was a security, of course. And still is, in my view. And, you know, all the same shady stuff, all the fake marketing, all the dumping on retail, all the insider manipulation, it's all there in Ethereum too. So what are you going to do? You know, and then you look at, like, you know, what's maybe the best analogy? Like, if they do get away with it, we've seen that happen before. We saw it happen here in LA long before I got here with Scientology, which wanted the tax-free status of being a religion. Right. And basically all they had to do was just get thousands of their members to file lawsuits and just clog up every single court system. And finally they were like, you know, fuck it, you guys can have it. Like, we just can't deal with you guys anymore. So they have, you know, tax-free properties all over the world now, including right in the middle of Hollywood, like Beechwood Canyon. Like, you know, they got away with it. So people do get away with it. And it's very possible that crypto will just get away with it. Wow. But it is, you know, according to laws on the books and the facts of the matter, it's all criminal.
That's what I've come to realize as well. So, well, Cory, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, let's switch gears for a bit here. Let's talk about Swan Bitcoin here. Now,
I love Swan.
I love it too. Listen, Swan connected with me for two reasons, Cory. First, it was I'd already been orange pilled in Bitcoin. I was just 100% Bitcoin. And so the fact that Swan was Bitcoin only company, that there was nothing else, there wasn't even a sell button. And it was that just blew me away. The fact that it's Bitcoin only without a sell button, and you had me at the no sell button. that was the first reason that it truly connected with me. And the second reason is that it was an education first company as well. Like, the educational side of Swan touched me deeply because it resonated with the approach I took in my space all the way back in 1994. I believed that if I took an educational bent toward my space, I was a professional trader on Wall Street, and I felt like if I became an educational company first and a trading company second, that I believe that the educator will always receive the greatest degree of loyalty and appreciation. And I kind of saw a little bit of that model in Swan Bitcoin, and you had me.
Well, I appreciate it, man. You know, selfishly for you and for me, like, the other thing, you know, is if you want to learn something, try to teach it.
That's right. Absolutely.
You know, so my diamond hands have been
become more diamond through your teaching and education. Absolutely.
You know, we always, Gigi, if you've ever heard of Gigi.
Oh, yes. I love him.
He simplified my long version of this to the more you know, the more you buy. But I used to say something like, you know, one's propensity to store value in the Bitcoin protocol is highly correlated with their understanding of Bitcoin. And he said, "Oh, you mean the more you know, the more you buy?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, exactly." God,
he has that uncanny ability to like go right to the heart of something. Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's really what it is. You know, I saw that I wanted to solve a problem that I had for myself, which was just, you know, why did I waste a year in shitcoins? I wish I had just gone straight to Bitcoin. I'd like to get through that faster. And I think you saw people that got interested in 2020, you know, get through it faster because there was so much more great education out there, right? Like Tales from the Crypt started in 2018, Stefan Livera podcast, 2018. Safedean's book, 2018. Jan Pritzker's book, Inventing Bitcoin, early 2019. Brady Swenson's podcast was 2018. That was Citizen Bitcoin. Like over and over again. I think Guy Swan, Bitcoin Audible, that would, you know,
so
that was probably
the level of
quality.
The level of quality was heightened a great deal.
So much better.
Time. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, love or hate the conflicted economics of pomp, but it's a mostly Bitcoin focused show, and that was 2018 as well, right?
It is, absolutely.
So many good sources for Bitcoin signal, and I think we were part of that. You know, we were part of that wave, launching, and you know, the company started in summer of 2019, and we were putting out newsletters by the fall, and obviously launched Swan in March of 2020. Actually,
wow.
Yeah, it was March 30th.
It's a baby. Day one. It's a baby.
yeah, we're coming up on 2 years now.
Wow. The growth that I've actually witnessed as a client of the firm has just been astounding. Now, Swan has recently furthered its educational efforts with like the new Bitcoin Canon product, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I love to rip off names from established companies that have similar things, especially if they make me kind of angry. So the fact that Andreessen Horowitz has the crypto canon, which is full of misinformation, made me want to create the Bitcoin canon. And I usually look at successful crypto things, and then I just get rid of the shitcoins. I mean, you know, Swan is basically like Coinbase minus shitcoins, and our whole educational platform is basically Real Vision minus shitcoins. but yeah, so the Bitcoin canon, this is something that I conceived of, you know, 9 months ago probably, and we've been kind of building toward it and refining exactly what it is ever since. But we've been leveraging the foundation of it, which is the curation of what was initially the first 600. Now it's over 1,000 of the best individual pieces of Bitcoin educational content from all of history.
That is incredible. Cory, I just want my Bitcoiners to understand this. So it's every valuable piece of content that has ever been put out there from the beginning of Bitcoin until now, curated in one location. Yes. Wow. Traders, you hear that? That is amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the foundation. And then you can use that for different things. So I've been using it to put out a daily newsletter every single day. Cory.substack.com. You get one piece with a little intro from me talking about why I think it's important. And it's one of the pieces selected from the canon. So the Daily Bitcoiner is my newsletter that's built from that foundation layer of the canon. Now we also have the Bitcoin Canon product on Swan, which is free for everybody. But this is where you can actually create your own sequence that's topical. So you could do like Bitcoin 101, and it would be the resources that you love to share with people, you know, in order, and people can track their progress and get through those podcasts, YouTube videos, blog posts, book chapters, whatever, tweet threads, whatever you've put into your rabbit hole is what we call it. So like Lynn Alden might do one about Bitcoin and energy. Somebody else might want to do one about, you know, CBDCs and why Bitcoin's better. And they might grab, you know, 5 or 6 of the best pieces about that. You know, hardcore on Bitcoin tech. There's lightning rabbit holes. So you can kind of we always talk about Bitcoin. To even have like a decent understanding of Bitcoin, you need like a modicum of understanding of like 8 or 9 different fields, whether it's computer science, you know, finance, economics, history, sociology, political science. Like there's all these computer science, like there's all these things you need, cryptography, money. Like there's all these things you need to know a little bit about, but each of those has much, much deeper rabbit holes where you could go hardcore down the Austrian economics thing and read all the Rothbard and the Hoppe and the, you know, Hayek and all that stuff. So this is kind of a way where not only can you, just like if you get used to reading, you know, reviews by a movie reviewer or a music reviewer, you're like Peter Travers, I always just read his stuff. you know, in Rolling Stone, what he has to say about movies, I can usually gauge whether I think that's good. So if you have a voice that speaks to you and it's like, man, I love listening to Matt Odell or Robert Breedlove or Lynn Alden or, you know, Michael Saylor, I just want to look at this aspect of Bitcoin through their lens with the things that they think is important. That's what this lets you do. And it also lets you kind of promote your own thing too, right? Because it's like maybe 80% as good as writing a book, because you got this beautiful page, your face is welcoming people, you put your own intro, you introduce the things on the topic that you think is important, all your information is down at the bottom. And that's like another URL that you can use to, you know, promote whatever you're doing in and around Bitcoin.
Incredible. That is so needed in the space as well. So needed in the space. Amazing. The Swan Bitcoin team is, I think you have one of the most powerful teams in the space, Cory. It's comprised of some of the brightest minds and the most respected contributors to the Bitcoin community. You missed me, but you know, we can talk about that later.
It's early, bro. It's early. It's early. We're growing.
Can you speak briefly about, I mean, I don't know how large it is, but the members that I know, can you speak a little bit about each one of the members and how they became a part of Swan?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started out knowing that I wanted as many of the top educators, by my own judgment, just the people that spoke to me, to be involved in the company as possible. So even when the initial plan was just the gifting product, which is what we launched in fall of 2019 before launching Swan in early 2020, already had like, you know, a dozen to 15 of these guys and gals involved. Right. So they were on the cap table, gave away advisor shares, or they were starting to help out with the company. And it was kind of through that we started to develop working relationships, because they saw me operate, they saw me raise money, they saw me hire people, you know. So like, you know, that crucial first hire was, I read Inventing Bitcoin in spring of 2019, and I thought it was the best book that I've read on Bitcoin. It still is to this day. Wow. And Jan Pritzker wrote that book, and I didn't really know his background at the time, but I got to know him a little bit. I was like, wow, this dude, you know, this already had 6 startups, sold 3, last one sold for almost 300 mil. I kind of want to like get to know this guy a little better. And he liked what we were working on, and he was basically retired, but had plenty of time, and he's young. It's like 38 or 40 or something like that. And, you know, he just asked if I wanted him to kind of hang out in the team Slack and just kind of watch things and chip in with advice. And little by little, we just got to be friends and got to trust each other. And then we both ended up on the advisory board for Riot, the Bitcoin mining company on the NASDAQ, along with Pierre Richard. And so we got to know each other better there too. And yeah, and then he was just like, I think it might make sense for me to work on this full time. And I said, really? You would? Okay, let's do it. So he became CTO in I think December of 2019. Brady Swenson, similar thing. You know, I went on his podcast, and we were just getting crushed when we launched. There was so much to do because it just kind of shot out like a cannon, and I didn't expect it to be that big of a hit with just that little gifting product. So I was just looking for warm bodies, and I just popped into my head, wow, that guy, I wonder what that guy Brady does, because he was such a good interviewer, and it was such a pleasant conversation, and he seemed smart, and he was eloquent. So I just reached out. Similar thing, Brandon Quittem came that way. Basically just started hiring from Twitter. So Brady, the 3 Burrs, outside of Jan, the first 3 were the 3 Burrs, Brady, Brandon, and Brecky. So Brecky's our longtime creative director. Brandon runs comms, writes all the emails to 350,000 people a month. You know, so that's kind of how it built. And then I tried hiring non-Bitcoiners for a couple of roles just on contract early in 2020. And they washed out so quick because you couldn't speak the same language. You're just wasting so much time. So we stopped ever doing that. We decided to only hire people who were like pretty well-known Bitcoiners, or who we could just kind of verify through some channels and talking to them that they really understood Bitcoin deeply and cared about it a lot. And we just built the team from there. So it's 50 people now, which is crazy. Okay. Yeah, so 50 people, and you know, it's a fast growing team. We've probably got 10 roles open right now on bitcoinerjobs.com if you want to check it out.
Okay, fantastic. I like that. Okay. Your DCA options, your dollar cost averaging options, any plans to maybe incorporate a daily dollar cost averaging option?
Oh, we've had daily for.
Do you really? No, not daily. I'm sorry. I'm
Like
sorry. No.
every block, every 10 minutes or every hour. That's what you want.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Yeah, you know about
I
the
don't
daily.
know. No, actually, yes. I think what there was I think there's a service out there now. I think Strike offers like hourly or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure I'd like to go that far, but any plans to do something similar to that?
I mean, you can. I mean, we could offer it too. It's not that hard. It's just like some code, but it's just the
Right.
incremental value of that versus building entirely new products. It just doesn't matter that much.
Right. I get it.
There's nothing to be gained by buying hourly versus daily. Like you can see it in the numbers. Once you're weekly, weekly actually has slightly better returns than monthly, but there's no difference really between daily and weekly. I just personally love the satisfaction. Just like I want to sweat every day. I want to hang with my kids every day, and I want to buy Bitcoin every day. Yes. So I do daily, but from a returns perspective, there's just no difference once you get to weekly.
That's fascinating. I never really knew that. So the incremental improvement is very small. It's very incremental. It's very small between daily and weekly. Okay.
Yeah.
Negligible.
Yeah.
All right. Very interesting to know. All right. Okay. What about any plans to incorporate the Lightning Network in some form or fashion?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the Swan app is, it's actually in beta right now. So we've got a few hundred people banging around on it.
That was my next question. So app is coming. Okay.
So the app comes out in March. It'll be there before the Bitcoin conference. If any of y'all are going to Miami, by the way, make sure you come say hi to us. We'll be very visible. I think we'll have 20 people roaming the floor in flight suits. Doing stuff like that. Okay. So it should be fun. But yeah, so the app will be out, and then we're building a self-custodial Lightning wallet into the Swan app. So there will actually be a logged in and a logged out version. You'll be able to use the Swan Lightning wallet around the world, no KYC. And then if you choose to buy some Bitcoin through Swan, then you'll be able to just do the light KYC and get started.
Traders, no KYC. All right, fantastic. You know, Cory, the Lightning Network is, it's the most overlooked, underrated component of Bitcoin. And I think that's a crime. Like there's no upper limit on its transactions per second. And it literally kills the energy FUD nonsense that continues to get thrown, Bitcoin's way. I can't understand why this is so ignored by mainstream media and everyone else. What's your idea behind that? Why is that?
I mean, I'm certainly not ignoring it. Just in the last year, I invested in Breeze, Galoy, Zion, and Impervious.
Oh, nice.
So I'm just like, I'm just spreading little checks wherever I can, trying to get a piece of, whichever one of these things take off. But I think, most of them will. They're in early enough.
Yes,
they have good teams. They can figure some cool stuff out. But yeah, I mean, it's been known and talked about since 2009. 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely 2010, if not the first year that Bitcoin would scale on layers above Bitcoin, and that you should think about layer one on-chain Bitcoin as being like TCP/IP. And you and I are talking here on video chat on like layer 7 or layer 8 of the internet above the base layer 1 TCP/IP. And there's all these other protocols like HTTP, which is like the browser technology. You've got FTP and SMTP and all these other different things kind of layering up and stacking until you get to something like this. And, there were a lot of people in, 1998 that said, oh, we'll never have, full feature video over the internet. That's impossible. Well, those are the same people that are promoting altcoins today, right? Or CBDCs are saying like, you can't just do this on Bitcoin. It's like, just wait a beat, bro. Just like have a little patience. Like we just invented this thing. It's spreading. It's going fast. I mean, even just what you're going to be able to do with Lightning wallets like 6 months from now versus the last 2 years is dramatically different. Like the experience of actually having, a Lightning wallet on your phone is you're going to actually be able to self-custody without having to like sync the last, few days history when you're at point of sale wanting to pay for something. You're only going to have the private keys on your phone and not the whole block history that can be in the cloud.
The whole user experience is just rapidly becoming better and better.
Exactly. It's going to be like Venmo by the end of the year.
Wow. Well, half of our people here, we're over 3,000. About half, we run our own nodes, and
wow.
So We've got quite a few. My goal is to get everyone over the next several months there. So fantastic.
Cool.
Cory, just a couple more here, and we can bring our talk to a close. But I have an international audience, obviously, and I have traders that are spread over 96 different countries. And one of the number one questions I've gotten when I talk about Swan is it available in my country? And I believe you did go international. I don't think you were when I first started, as much at least. But where is Swan now in terms of its international reach?
Yeah, we opened the doors to non-US January of 2021. So we're about 13 months in now to serving the rest of the globe. Most countries that your folks will be from, if they're speaking one of those languages, are going to be covered. You know, so I think it's 100 plus countries or something that we're able to sell in. You are going to need to be able to send a wire outside of the US. We do not seek banking relationships outside of the US.
Right.
That also subjects you to a lot more regulatory BS once you open up banking relationships to deal with customers in different countries. So as long as you can send a wire, and in a lot of places, especially for, you know, decent sized purchases, we're going to be the cheapest option, and we're definitely going to be the most trustworthy option for a lot of people around the world. So we have huge clients in Australia, throughout Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Middle East, UAE, all through Latin America, as you probably are aware.
That's perfect.
Max Kaiser and Stacy Herbert are like massive Swan fans, and they have just this
Yes.
absolutely massive Latin American audience. So a lot of the, you know, the folks in the administration of certain Bitcoinized countries purchase through Swan, and in Colombia as well. Yeah, we help with a lot of, you know, kind of research and position papers and things for people in administrations down there. I've helped with some stuff for people in the Colombian administration, Peru, El Salvador, Mexico. Yeah, we care.
Fantastic. Actually, it was Max and Stacy that I found out about Swan. And yeah, they're huge. They're huge users and fans, obviously. All right. Well, I had one question from one of our members here. Is it, how would Cory? How would you invest? This trader has $500,000 that they want to put in, and they want to know what you, in your opinion, is the best way to put that in. Is it to just do one giant smash buy, break it up over time, half now, dollar cost average in over time? What's your view?
So I have to deal with this a lot because a lot of my friends, family, people in the network will come and they're like, I have nothing, but I have a lot of, you know, fiat or stocks that I could sell, and I want to get to like 10% or 5% or 20% allocation to Bitcoin. What's my entry strategy? And basically what I dialed in on is like regret minimization framework. So you just want to, like, you're always going to have some way that you could have optimized it slightly better, but what you want to do is not regret it. So what I tell them is literally what I, you know, told my brother's best friend up in Seattle a couple of weeks ago when I was there. It's like, take that pile of cash that you were planning, put half of it in right now, and then the other half, 10% a week for the next 5 weeks. So 50% now, next week, 10%, 10%, 10%. I've never seen anybody get through all 5 weeks.
They just
get
dump
so
it
excited. Well, they get so excited. I've seen somebody make it to like week 3, but they get so excited. They start learning, they start reading, and they just gain that conviction. And at some point they get to the point where like, I don't actually care if I buy now and it goes down because I'm going to hold it for 10 years or the rest of my life and give it to my grandkids. What I really don't want is for the price to run away from me when I could have owned more. But that's what I would do. I think I actually stole that from Breedlove. That's what he was telling people to do a couple of years ago. I think it worked out.
Great plan. Very similar to my response. So I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah. So smash plus 5-part DCA.
There you go.
And then also make sure that, you know, the reason that I think DCA or automatic recurring purchase is so important to set up is just because, you know, you guys are not immune either. And I used to trade crypto and I used to trade stocks long ago before that. And like, even the best of y'all can get attracted to shiny objects, and it's usually shiniest when it's up. And so if this is going to be, you know, a key component to your long-term savings, just making sure that you're just buying the curve, like literally just always be stacking a little bit all the time.
That's right.
You know, and when you have profits from some other trade, you know, whatever it is, you know, put some of that in and go. When one of my startup, you know, exits, I had some good ones last year, like that's when I'll make a big bulk purchase. But otherwise, out of my measly startup CEO salary, I'm still stacking every day, man, straight out of my bank account.
There you go. Yes, yes. Many of us here, we've bought every single day for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Can
I pick off a couple from the audience?
Sure, absolutely.
I just realized I can see the chat.
Are you able to post? Because I can actually post it on the screen for all to see.
It doesn't look like I can post, but I can just answer a couple of the ones that are
sure.
Good for us.
Yeah, just repeat the question and
you got it.
There you go.
Excellent. Okay, so let's see. Will Swan offer yield products on BTC and cold storage? So you can't offer yield products on BTC and cold storage by definition, because you know they've got to actually lend that Bitcoin out if you want to get yield from it. But we do offer that for members of Swan Private Client Services. So this is people that have bought $100,000 or more through us. So those folks, we have a partnership with Velez, and we do offer BTC interest and BTC backed loans, so you can actually, you know, lever up or do things like that. We just restrict it to people that actually have an advisor relationship with one of our experts. It's not something I actually want to offer to retail, because it's just too easy to be irresponsible when you start doing leverage, and it's too easy to not understand the risks of giving other people your Bitcoin when you're talking about Bitcoin interest accounts.
I agree.
So we kind of restrict that to people that have enough that they could lose some and be fine, or at least have proven through their investment that they're sophisticated enough to have that much money at least. I do want to clarify, because you mentioned the non-KYC thing. The no KYC thing will be for users of just the Lightning wallet,
yes,
or the app if they don't want to buy through the app, because there's a lot of things to do in the app. And then we will also be able to do super light KYC. I think it's phone number and last four of social or something for purchases up to $5,000. So that will be launching in the spring as well. So just wanted to clarify what that was.
Okay, thank you.
So Bitcoiner jobs, I see a question there. So I did start Bitcoiner jobs a little less than a year ago, and it became so useful for us that we decided to bring it in-house. So I hired the guy that was building it for me. And so Calvin, I would just keep an eye out. There, 40 or 50 companies posting on there, and it's all the time. And then also you can post your own profiles. There's probably 1,000 people that have posted their profile, and companies actually search those profiles looking for people. But if you are not highly skilled in sort of the, engineering side of things, or have some like super quantifiable set of skills, I would suggest just engaging with the community as much as you can. So just get on Twitter, get known, get on Twitter Spaces, get on Clubhouse and talk to people in social audio. Oliver, we got to get you in some of these, by the way.
Absolutely.
I own Cafe Bitcoin, the Cafe Bitcoin brand on Clubhouse and Spaces. So if you ever want to hop in, chat with us, let me know.
I certainly will. I'll certainly will. Here's an interesting one. Does Cory have a wallet which he prefers for Lightning Network, or any? What's your favorite hard wallet?
Well, so I actually just use mobile wallets for Lightning stuff, because it's just kind of like my petty cash account essentially. So I usually just keep like $500, $1,000. Generally use Moon, MUN, until we have ours out. So it'll be all Swan by Q3, but for now I've just been using Moon.
Fantastic. Yeah, virtually everyone here has Moon. Yeah, that's what we use.
Yeah, it's really slick. They did a good job.
Yeah. Interesting. From Raphael, do you think the gold premium will go to BTC at one point in the future?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable over a longer time frame. There is a percentage chance that gold has a pretty ripping bull market. That's very possible.
Very possible here. Absolutely.
Very possible that, gold bugs are rewarded for their long pains and actually see, a 2x or a 3x or a 5x or something over the next 10, 20 years at the same time as Bitcoin is rising. 5,000 years as monetary asset is not to be sneezed at. I think with sort of these risk on sort of, shorter term trading things, it seems like that is just, Bitcoin is just eating all of gold's bid when it comes to the last few years. Like it's all going to Bitcoin basically. Or FANG stocks basically. But yeah, either big tech or Bitcoin is getting it, not gold, for the store of value thing. In the long run, I think it's just screwed, and it'll just be like, you know, jewelry. You know, that's it. It still is pretty.
Bitcoin manipulation, no, yes, no, matters, doesn't matter.
It can create amazing buying opportunities.
That's like very true.
the reason that spring 2020 was such a great time to buy is because so many people were selling covered calls for their clients. Yes. And they were just like smashing leverage shorts whenever the price got anywhere near 12. You know, this was a lot of NYDIG, by the way. I was doing that on behalf of all their clients.
Well, the GBTC trade too, as well, was a major driving force behind the move. Yes, as well.
Yeah. So that was upward pressure mostly,
right? Yes,
obviously. So that was kind of the zoom that drove 12K to 63K or whatever the first peak was.
Absolutely,
in large part. But yeah,
do you see that premium coming? You see that premium or the discount at least closing at some point?
Back? I hope so, man. I hope so. I got a couple of old rollovers in GBTC. I've been waiting, man. I'm not touching it, whatever. It's a small part of my overall, but yeah, it would be nice to see that come back. I'm not following it too closely.
Bitcoin ETF soon, never. What's your thoughts?
Someday, but not necessarily something that we should hope for. Really
interesting.
It's probably good for like near-term price action, but I don't think you really, Bitcoin is meant to be custodied by people, or at least either self-custody or at least diversified custody. And so if you get, a really successful ETF product that ends up hoovering up like 1 million coins or something like that, that's, I don't think, good for the health of the Bitcoin network.
Oh, that's an interesting take.
Humans.
That's an interesting take.
I'm totally fine. Also selfishly, like, I'd rather not compete with like an ETF. Since I sell Bitcoin, it'd be nice to not have an ETF in everybody's brokerage account. It's nice when it's hard, but I do think there is a reason that it hasn't gotten through. There are no single asset ETFs, really. Doesn't exist.
Oh, really? So the spot ETFs that are spoken about in other countries like Canada and Brazil.
Well, in the U.S. there aren't.
Right? No,
there are there, but there aren't really here. Yeah,
right, sure.
You've got funds that are created out of managed futures, but you've got like a lot of expertise required to do that. You got the roll trade and all that,
sure,
all that stuff you got to deal with. So, oh, did you just throw me a price prediction?
I couldn't leave without at least.
Yeah, man. So if anybody has done their research on me, they'll know I'm like the most.
Cory is not the price prediction guy.
Oh no, I'll give them. I'll just tell you that everybody else is full of shit too. So yeah, I don't know. Way up over time. Who knows by the end of this year? I don't know. I think, chances are we'll be up because we're going to be way up in 10 years, which means on average, each of the next 10 years will be up, but some of those years are going to be down. I don't know. It's not for that.
No, it's not. It really isn't. And I think the down, well, if you really understand the asset and want to be almost have a lifetime period of accumulating it, you're going to appreciate the down periods. But what's your view on the likelihood of Bitcoin from a fiat perspective being above 1 million by 2030, the end of the decade?
90%.
Wow.
Yeah,
well, that's certain.
Yeah. Well, I've publicly stated that one many times before, so I'm sticking to it.
Bitcoinization,
and by the way, in present day purchasing power, not inflated away fiat dollars. That doesn't count. That's a big game. But yeah, in present purchasing power.
Bitcoinization, where people are using it regularly as a medium of exchange on the Lightning Network or what have you.
Yeah.
When? How long?
My prediction, which again is very out there in public, and you can find it other places, is you'll be able to buy most goods and services, most places around the world, denominated in Satoshis by the year 2035.
Nice.
Doesn't mean that there won't be a second price in another currency on the price tag,
Right.
but you'll have a Sats price on there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, Cory, it has been such a pleasure and an honor to have you on here. I know my traders are extraordinarily happy. They've been anticipating our interview, our talk here today. And I just want to thank you for taking out time out of your busy schedule. I know you're extraordinarily busy. And I'm hoping we can do this at some point again in the future.
Yeah, I would love to. This was really fun. Love to learn
Fantastic.
about your community. I love the questions in there. So it's a good crew.
And can you share with my audience where they can follow you, where they can find some of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Cory Klippsten on Twitter, or Swan Bitcoin on Twitter. I would just start, honestly, you want to get access to us and like our whole crew and everybody we know.
Yes.
7-9 Pacific time, 10 to 12 in the morning Eastern time, every weekday. Cafe Bitcoin on Twitter Spaces. Just find us. It's Swan and Bitcoin Magazine co-hosts. So just look for those handles up there in Spaces and listen in. You can all, and you've heard me raving about this book. And one of the best things about getting Jan involved is he lets us give his book away now. So you can grab a free copy of Inventing Bitcoin, an ebook or audiobook, at swanbitcoin.com/free book. So highly recommend grabbing that. It really will.
I think I might have that here as well, but let's see here. Anyway, there's the swanbitcoin.com homepage, and I'm sure you can access it from there. Yes?
Probably, yeah. Anyway, swanbitcoin.com/free book. You can grab ebook, audiobook. That's a really good one to give to friends and family as well, which I do that all the time.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well,
cool.
Cory, once again, thank you very much. I'll be speaking to you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.
Ciao for now.
Bye.